Ordinance 2024-09, Section 78.6, Sexual Offenders, Place of Residence. Russ.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of council. Russ Brown, Deputy County Attorney. Before you for your consideration, as requested by council previously, is Ordinance 2024-09, Sexual Offenders, Place of Residence, creating Section 78-6 in the Code of Ordinance that would prohibit a sexual offender from residing either permanently or temporarily within 1,500 feet of any school, child care facility, designated public school bus stop, public park, and playground in the unincorporated portion of the county. The ordinance would also make it unlawful to knowingly rent a place to a person prohibited by the ordinance from renting a residence that's located within the 1,500 feet of any school, child care facility, designated public school bus stop, public park, and playground. There are exceptions contained within the ordinance that would most notably grandfather persons that are residing currently within the additional 500 feet. And when I say additional 500 feet, so currently we follow the state statute of 1,000 feet. This would increase it to an additional 500 feet in the unincorporated area. We have the map in front of you. It's kind of a macro view, if you will, of what the ordinance in the red is the additional 500 feet, so what that would look at in comparison. I also have Mr. Brandon Barnett, the GIS and LIS manager on your staff, who can answer any of the technical questions of what goes into doing those boundaries. He ran a report with the additional 500 feet, and it's approximately 4.5% of the current dwellings would be removed with this additional 500 feet, if that makes sense. So with that, I'll answer any questions. So there would be 4.5% less dwellings available for offenders to reside in if the additional 500 feet is approved in the unincorporated, of the total percentage available now. And with that, I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions first. Danny Robbins.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Brown and staff. Real quick, Russ, do we have the available homes that are left after that 4-point-some-odd reduction that are available for housing if they do so choose?
I'm going to let Mr. Barnett answer that question.
So in the unincorporated area, we're looking at, well, total right now, there's about 28,000, 29,000 dwelling units, right, based on parcel data. When we look at the analysis here, then proposed impact, we're going to reduce in the unincorporated area that number by about 7,000, right? So you're going to be left with about 21,000 dwelling units across all the county, or roughly about 10,000 dwelling units in the unincorporated area.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Don, did you have a question for staff?
Yes, I do. Russ, whenever he's done, I'm going to talk to Russ. But I'll ask you as well. You said, what did they say about statistics?
Careful.
Yeah. So you're saying that this proposal is only going to cut down the housing 4%?
4% of the residential parcels. And
Okay.
how we arrive there, right, we use the property appraiser's parcel code description. Single family, right, multifamily housing.
Okay.
And we basically selected those and then ran those numbers.
So is it your position that these sex offenders are only going to have a 4% decrease in their available housing?
If we look at the impact on this, yes, it'll reduce the unincorporated dwellings available by 4.5%.
So you're saying that the rest of these available homes, they're all available to registered sex offenders. Every landlord out there, besides this 4%, is willing to rent to sex offenders?
No, sir. All we're saying is that within the this is the impact within the additional 500 feet. It's not about whether there's a willing, I don't know somebody's intent, right? They're willing to rent somebody or whatnot.
I mean, let's kind of get grounded here. How many, just for my background, I mean, and for everybody else, I've been doing criminal law for 34 years, both as a prosecutor and a defense attorney. And I'm against this. And the reason being is because the criminal justice system has already vetted these people to say they're free to walk amongst us. Okay, the judges, our elected state attorney, they've evaluated these cases, they've looked at them, and instead of going to prison, they've reasoned that these people have served their time, they've done whatever they had to do, and now they're fit to walk amongst us. And so now we're creating an additional layer of punishment that we have no business doing. And to come here and say it's only 4%, I think is disingenuous.
Well,
Because-
let me
well-
let me just correct on that, because we have to operate within the data that we have.
Okay, well,
I don't know if the property owners would deem the structure to be vacant, or if they'd want to rent to one of these individuals. Nobody on your staff's going to be able to do that.
well, let's do this. How many, we've spoken with, Russ and I collectively have spoken with sex offender probation officers, seasoned probation officers, and they've said there's, out of this whole county, there's only 3 landlords that'll rent to sex offenders. Is that correct?
I know that, and this is the recourse we had back and forth last time, sir.
Yes, sir.
That was the probation officer's indication that there were 3. And I do know that there were other addresses that were given to us by actually the sheriff's sex crimes division. There was 5. And in full disclosure, those 5 that they say are kind of known multifamily dwelling units at rent, those 5 would be caught up in this new 500 feet, meaning they would be prohibited.
Correct.
So I don't know about the other 3, but yeah.
So as part of this study, you know, we all, right now, because of the current laws in our mapping in our registered sex offender registry, we know where these people live. We know where all the sex offenders live now. The sheriff can keep track of where they are, and if they leave their residence for more than 3 days, they have to report and tell us where they're going. So has the county looked at where these current registered sex offenders live and how this new ordinance would affect those people? They would be all displaced, right?
No, sir. Everybody if you currently reside in a residence and you're registered, you're grandfathered in.
I understand.
It's
Okay,
for new.
Let's just go 5 years from now or something. Okay, let's talk about our children and the environment they're going to have to live in. Okay, so let's look at the next generation. So are those places going to be available for the future sex offenders that are released into Volusia County? Are they going to have the same places to live that the current ones do?
If the council's decision today is to approve the ordinance and it's still in effect in 5 years, and those residents reside within the 1,500 feet away from the places in the ordinance, then no, they would not be allowed for new residents.
Correct. So in essence, with this, there's not going to be anywhere for a new registered sex offender, let's say a year from now. They get out, there's nowhere for them to live in Volusia County. Is that fair to say?
No, sir, I can't say that.
Well, under the current landlords who are currently leasing to registered sex offenders.
I can't say that, Mr. Dempsey. What I can say is of the 5 to 8 that we got addresses from, they are caught up in this additional 500 feet as based on what we've been told. And for the 3 for the probation officer, because I didn't have those addresses, they were never given to me to be able to run, but I did run the 5 that the sex crimes unit, I believe that's the unit the sheriff has, they gave me of known addresses who said that they would be caught up in these additional 500 feet.
Right. So a person getting released from prison who's going to spend the rest of their life as a sex offender, they grew up in Holly Hill, where are they going to go? Where can they rent a place in Volusia County? Based on, as far as you know, I understand you don't know everything, and I get that. But I mean, based on your knowledge from the 5 landlords, I guess, who do currently rent, but when you say they're caught up, that means no more new sex offenders living on their property, correct?
Right.
Correct. Can't be registered, right.
So then what happens is there's no way for us to track where they're living. They become homeless in the eyes of the registry, correct?
If they don't have a residence, they would be homeless.
Correct. So there's nowhere to monitor their location for the sheriff because the 5 landlords who are renting to registered sex offenders, we know where they are. They have to register where they're living, and if they leave that location for more than 3 days, they have to report where they're going, correct?
They're supposed to. Yes.
But if they're homeless, if this passes, then the new guy getting out of prison, being released into our community, has nowhere to rent. So he's homeless and he's unaccounted for, correct?
Yeah, I think
In your
I think-
hypothetical, yes, sir.
I think the situation that we're in is we know we only have a certain amount of data that we have to operate in. This clearly, if it were adopted, would reduce the number of dwellings that would be available for these individuals.
Reduce or eliminate.
I don't think any of it can say eliminate, but it's certainly going to make it more challenging to find the available place. It could have the effect of impacting some existing facilities that are focused on providing a home for these individuals. I've also heard in the past, has been talked about, that if you reduce the number of available, and when we say available, it could be an occupied structure currently. So it's not necessarily vacant, but if you reduce the number of dwellings that are available, it could result in somebody not able to find a home. And I think, going to your point, that right now, if they have a place and they've registered with the sheriff's office, you know where they are.
Right.
Yeah.
So the point being, I know we could talk about what ifs, but the reality of today is there's only 5 known landlords that'll even rent.
I
that
don't
are
have-
renting.
I just want to be clear, Mr. Dempsey. I don't have that information. All I have is
Right.
I was given 5 addresses of known places that rent to offenders, and asked to run those, and I did. And those with Brandon ran them. Actually, I gave them to Brandon. He ran them, and those 5 addresses would be within the additional 500 feet. I don't know that those are the only 5 addresses for multifamily dwelling units that rent to offenders. That's not what I'm saying. And additionally, it's a less than 5% reduction in the total amount of units available. I'm just saying there are others out there, just like the intent to rent. We can't say that about somebody else. I can't say somebody will or won't. There are other places based on the numbers that would not be caught up in this additional 500 feet.
Well, wait, hold on. Now, you just said there's 5 known landlords that'll rent to sex offenders.
Well,
That you know of.
that was 5 addresses that were given to me by the sheriff's unit, that are addresses that I was presumed given to me, that rent to, have multifamily type dwellings and rent to sex
How
offenders.
many won't be affected by this? How many current landlords who rent to sex offenders won't be affected by this?
I don't know that number other than the ones outside the 1,500 feet.
Right. So 100% of those 5 known landlords that rent to sex offenders will be wiped out. Not 4% of them, not 1 out of the 5, but all 5 are going to be wiped out by this new ordinance.
5 addresses that were given to me.
5 out of 5. That's more than 4%, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you recall our conversation with the probation officers who said that if this passes, it'll basically make them all homeless.
We did have that conversation.
Right. And it's true, right? They said it.
Yeah, they did. Yes, sir.
And they also said that basically once they're homeless, there's no accounting for them. And they're just basically living in the woods, living downtown DeLand on the streets, walking the streets of Daytona, walking near playgrounds. You don't know where they are, right?
Well, I just want to be clear that I think it's totally appropriate for you to say that. That's not information that's coming from us. I'm not saying it's wrong, but they're not here today, I guess, to speak to it. But if they shared it with you, it's good enough for you to say it's a legislative decision by you. So it's not quasi-judicial. So it's a legislative decision of council.
My question was to Russo. He shared it with us. I'm not asking you to trust me, but
Well,
it
we
was said to me,
and
to
we
Russ-
will trust you, because you don't have to.
to trust me if you
You don't
want.
have
I
to have a
care.
witness to substantiate, your opinion or information. So.
But I
But I'm
heard
asking him
But I
to-
heard the conversation. sir.
Yes. Okay. I'm not just making this up. That's
No,
all
sir.
I have.
You're not.
Thanks.
Jake Johansson.
Yes, sir. Russ, we had a conversation last week. I'm going
And,
to
yes,
bring
sir.
it up. I'm going to ask you to recall it because I want you to trust me. No, just kidding. By the way, I'd like to give a shout out to Troy's parents who are watching. I know there might be 5, there might be 8. We can probably find out from the sheriff where these clusters of folks are.
Yes, sir, and I want to be clear. So the addresses that were given to me, I do believe, and the sheriff's office has been very cooperative
Yeah.
and very appreciative, and they gave me the addresses, and those are known addresses, I believe, that were given to me
Yeah.
of clusters.
I mean, if the sheriff has this registry and there's 4 people living in a place, that's good enough for me.
Yes, sir.
So, and I think the county attorney brought up, and you brought up, that there is space in the county that where homes may or may not be rentable, that these folks could live in.
Yes, sir.
So if somebody comes out of jail and or the judge says you're now a sexual offender, sexual predator, and you don't go to jail, I imagine if you're a offender you might be, but not a predator, or vice versa, that you now need to look for a place. And if we approve this ordinance, one of the places you won't be looking is one of these 5 to 8 to however many places. And you might have a problem finding a rental in the clear areas that are available. But now you know where to look, right? And I would hope there would be some very nice nonprofit to go, these are the places that are predator offender friendly. But that may not be available right now. So we're not moving the people that are in there now out. We're not kicking them out in the street.
Correct.
So
Yes,
they're
sir.
not homeless. And the people that come out of jail or get a judgment against them currently are living somewhere, we hope. And do they have a certain amount of time to find a place to live if where they're living with their family, with their parents, by the way, is
I believe they do. I don't know what the conditions are. I'd have to look that up.
Okay. So in this ordinance, is there any way we can gather the locations where these multiple people live and exclude that, not those people, but that location?
So if that's council's direction, I would ask to give us time to research that issue.
Sure.
To get those addresses in cooperation with the sheriffs, with probation.
I am a huge fan
Yes, sir.
of these folks clumped together where the sheriff can account for 12, 14, 16 of them in one place. Why stop in 16 different places when I can stop in one?
Yes, sir.
And from what we've heard from one of the landlords, at least I have via a phone call and a few emails, is that actually she spoke early on, is that she provides support of some sort and checks on them every day. I like a person who cares that much to support those people and would like to continue that. She and people like her probably aren't going to do it if they're at 15 or 18 different houses. Now, granted, she's probably getting some kind of rent for them, and I mean, a couple of them that have emailed us early on, they have jobs, they work. You wouldn't know until they mention it, right? So if I would love to find a way to carve these places out, because I think they're an important piece of our community, and then allow the 1,500 foot to stay, to kind of come up with a compromise.
Yes, sir. And so if that's council's direction, we would just
Yeah.
ask that you basically
It's
basically
doable, is
table
what
it.
you're telling me.
It may be doable. We need to research it. I have a
Okay.
little bit of concern about a disparate issue impact, but we just need to take a look at it.
Yep.
And then cooperation with various agencies to make sure we get the addresses that need to be accepted out, if you will.
Got it. And then if not, George and Mike, can we come up with, if we can't get there, can we come up with innovative ways to work with people that might be able to develop something in the area that's now qualified? Because what's saying the next council in 6 years doesn't say, man, I want to up it to 2,000 now, and now, I mean, we're gentrifying left and right, and here's another opportunity to do it. I'm not a big fan of it.
Well, do you mean
From a development standpoint.
yeah, work about developing a facility or structures within a
Or
concentrated
allowing it.
area?
Allowing it, because right now, there's,
So your ordinance, the exception, are you talking about like if something is built after?
so if we take away these, I'll call them apartment complexes, if we take them away, these 5 to 8 to maybe more, you don't know, and there's no place within the white area, can we work with those people to allow them to build or otherwise repurpose buildings in the unincorporated area, to allow them to, I want the clusters at the end of the day. Can we move them somewhere? Can we help them with, maybe not incentives, but look, this is a good idea over here. I don't know.
So I don't know about the exclusions, but I will say this is a big moving target, right? These are school bus stops, parks, and so as you add to them, right, new park opens, that creates a new exclusion area. And so, we're obligated by the state, 16 municipalities. This is a big lift every quarter for my group to make sure that the sheriff can operate intelligently.
Yeah, all right, thank you very much. That's all I have.
Danny Robbins.
Thank you, Chair. We heard a testimony, it said that we have no business doing so. Russ, in your investigation into this subject matter, has society deemed a maximum of 2,500 feet statutorily to be acceptable in municipalities, counties? Yes or no?
Yes, sir. There are residents, local governments that have 2,500 feet.
Okay. With that being said, Council, I'd like to take it to debate, and I'll make a motion to approve this additional residency restriction.
Second.
Councilman Robbins makes a motion to approve the extra 500 feet, and second was by David Santiago. I have one quick question before we go to debate. Has the sheriff's office rendered opinion on this?
The sheriff this morning, it was relayed through his attorney that he does support the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Open for debate, and we also have 3 members of the public who would like to speak to this. For debate, Danny Robbins.
Chairman, thank you. And just so we can just rewind a little bit, there was overwhelming support from law enforcement, from the sheriff and his 35-plus years of law enforcement experience and expertise, as well as multiple agencies throughout Volusia County that also did support this matter. But Council, we have an argument on the table that an increased residency restriction will make the homeless population of this sector of people greater, and that we're not going to be able to track them down. With not only my years of experience and training in law enforcement, I'd say that that couldn't be farther from the truth. I'm going to tell you why. Statutorily, they still have to register. You can't just put homeless with a question mark and boom, poof, poof, they disappear. It is very serious. For example, on the registry paperwork, you have to leave details. You just can't put under the oak tree. You can't just say homeless. They literally have to put behind Walmart at 44.95, red tent. Okay, they have to disclose for accountability purposes any new tattoos, identifying marks, their new phone numbers, right? Their social media accounts, their credit cards or EBT cards, all of which are tracked through location services through a carrier of some point, computers, IP addresses, stuff that's attached to your phone. So, you know, to think that, or to create an argument or non-argument or non-issue that this would be displacing people and we just wouldn't be able to create a fear factor and say we're not going to be able to track them is highly false with the technology that's out there today. And you'd be highly mistaken if we, in my opinion, believe that. Homeless sexual offenders or predators is actually very rare. You know why? They have every incentive to find a place, just like Mr. Brown, were we able to get those pictures of all the dots that we sent to Carissa? Carissa, are you able to pull it up, all the residences? And I'll say this, when there's a will, there's a way. There's over 1,000 reasons or proof of that statement. They have every incentive to find a place to stay. If not, counsel, what happens? It's a violation of failure to register and is mandatory, and I'll repeat, mandatory prison. Think about that. Who wants to go to prison? Or who has ever said, hey, I want to go to prison? Said no one ever. Yes, housing is tough. That is the point. If they don't like it, people are going to be upset. I'll personally buy them a bus ticket out of town. But this, I want to be crystal clear. I want folks to know, and our families and visitors to know, that we will not tolerate or find this behavior acceptable in our community. And I'm not going to kowtow or take this laying down and accept this vile behavior. It's not going to happen with me. There's going to be some arguments where we're going to try to disprove a negative, but if we look at crime trends throughout the country, the state, even the community, where these laws are in place, you'll see less repeat offenses, less recidivism, and less crime. Why, you may ask? Because they know the consequences. Or, two, they move somewhere else. So, I think we need to vote in favor of this, but science dictates, counsel, that sexual offenders and predators have a tendency and urge to reoffend if left in and around an environment in which they cannot control their actions. This is no different than a drug user, no different than a thief or a burglar, or leaving those types of people in your home to be unsupervised. They will steal. Science and history shows that there will be repeat offenses. So the only answer I can come up with is to take them or limit that environment greater than what it is. Take them out of that environment so that we don't have to explain to our kids why somebody in their school or community got molested, why someone in their school got abducted, why someone in their school was a victim of human trafficking or sexual exploitation or child pornography. Because these heinous acts happen, they don't just create one victim in our community. It affects a whole family. It affects the whole block. It affects our whole community. But believe it or not, in some cases, those innocent victims become offenders somewhere down the road. And as inconvenient, counsel, to the public as this may seem, I want to ask everybody and ask the victim how inconvenient the trauma and the pain they have faced at the hands of the offender. Thank you.
Councilman Dempsey.
Yeah, that's a very good talking point, Danny. I just don't know how 500 feet somehow saves the day. I don't know if there's any logical correlation over 500 feet. 500 feet from a bus stop, more, really? That's the answer to everything is 500 feet? I've been doing this 34 years. I know you're, I guess, questioning my credentials. I used to prosecute these cases. I've defended these cases. It's funny, everybody checks with law enforcement. What's law enforcement? Yeah, the torches and the pitchfork. Let's get them. Has anybody checked with the local defense bar? Or anybody checked with the probation officers to ask them, hey, how does this really affect the long term, the reality of this? It's really a good talking point to get out the pitchforks and the torches and say, let's get them, let's burn them, let's make their lives as miserable as possible. I'm not here even necessarily advocating for them, even though they are human beings, and the justice system has already deemed them to be fit. If they were that bad, they would be in prison for the rest of their life. But the justice system has deemed them fit not to be in prison for the rest of their life, even though what they're accused of is a minimum mandatory life in prison. For some reason, they've been vetted through the system and are allowed to walk the streets. So now, who are we to step on the judicial system? We don't like judges who legislate from the bench, but we got a legislative body here creating laws that the judges have felt these people are free to walk amongst us under the current laws. And what gets me, here's an article. I'm just talking about tracking these people. Here's an article, Fox 30, Jacksonville, about St. Augustine. This was a couple years ago. Talking about, the title is Homeless Sex Offenders Become a Growing Florida Problem. Okay? Residents listed on a sex offender registry in Florida must live in certain areas, but they are not required to have a permanent address. In one case, a predator in St. Johns County was listed as living in the woods behind a Winn-Dixie. The individual has since moved. A resident said, my concern would be that the children, would be more for the children, because they're outside, said a St. Johns County resident. Action News dug through the registry to find at least 6 St. John's offenders on the registry, including 2 predators who are listed as transients. Action News Jack's law and safety expert Dale Carson said it's becoming a growing problem and it's difficult for law enforcement to track these people. We find them living under bridges, on boats. We find them in the community away from the children, he said, but those individuals specifically are very hard to track. In a statement, the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office said all offenders, including transients, are monitored primarily through the use of an offender watch as well as the FDLE portal. Quarterly address verifications are completed on all monitored predators and offenders, and this data is monitored and updated in the offender watch system. A representative went on to say that the only time of notification is required when a person individual is classified as a predator. The notification must be made to the nearby residents. Hold on, I'm going here to the end. Florida Department of Law Enforcement said that all transient offenders are required to register the same way as an individual with a permanent address. However, the only difference is these individuals must also check in with the sheriff's office in person every 30 days. That's just it. What you're getting rid of by making these people transient is, like right now, if I live at number 1 Happy Street and I want to go to Orlando for 4 days to go to Disney World, I have to tell the sheriff's office where I'm going because I have a registered address and that's where I'm going, and I have to let them know. If you're transient, you can just go to Disney World, go to Universal, go hang out, wherever, just go hang out. And they have no way of tracking where you are. As long as you report every 30 days, you're okay. So you don't have the same requirements if you're transient as if you have a residence. I want these people to be able to be located at all times. I don't want the sheriff's office to have to go on a hunting expedition or a Where's Waldo. Well, where are they? Which wood? Okay, where in the woods are they? I mean, we need to have an address. And you know what? If they're not at that address and we go by there and check 4 days and they're not there, felony. I've seen people go to prison for a long time for not being at home after 3 days and not registering in their new location. I've never seen that happen with a transient. So I understand why you're trying to be tough on them, but I think it's going to make it worse for the community instead of better because they're going to be unaccounted for. Thanks.
Councilman Robbins.
Thank you, Chair. And Don, I try to understand that sometime, but I'm not a defense attorney, and I don't show a lot of sympathy for some of these acts. I'm sorry, I don't. But also, too, I want to note or make a worthy note that the laws and the judges have deemed it acceptable to increase it to 2,500 feet. If these laws didn't make a difference, then why would they be on the books? Think about that. Because my next motion is going to be to amend the 1,000 feet and recommend the 2,500 feet. I don't want to do that. I think we can get there and add and give our law enforcement an additional tool, just like we do when I was working narcotics. We did this when it came to drug charges. There's increased penalties when you're in and around a playground, like sale and delivery, Don. Churches, schools, daycares. You know why? They work. It's a deterrent. It gives our law enforcement another tool in their toolbox to make our community safer. I just don't see a lot of other argument for that. I can't speak to St. John's. I can't speak to the level of their sheriff's department. What I can do is speak to the leadership in our own Volusia County Sheriff's Office and our own local municipalities, because these guys are on top of it. And we have record funding to make our community safer, but I also want to provide them this extra tool. To say that any one of us, or I would be making the county more unsafe or making these people transient, Don, I don't really agree with that, because this comes down to individual responsibility. I didn't make them to do anything. Our society has deemed certain things to be acceptable and unacceptable. This, whether it be by plea, whether it be a trial by jury of their peers, whatever the case may be, that is a decision, however it happened, that they made, that they have to deal with. To pin that on any one of us when public safety really, Don, is all of our responsibility and all of our goal, I don't know if that's that's much of an argument. There's responsibility that they have to take. Society has deemed certain things, whether it's 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 20, they've deemed it all acceptable by law. You know, I think we're off. You know, I'm not upset with you, Don. I hope you don't think that. You know, but I don't see much of an argument to try to make, no matter what the argument or defense may be, or an excuse why we wouldn't take action to make our community safer when it's been proven time and time and time over again at a city level, county level, state level, and national level throughout the country. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 3 members of the public who would like to speak. Let's do that first, and then we'll wrap this up. First, we have John Nicholson.
John Nicholson, Daytona Beachside. I understand the need. However, I'm worried about unintended consequences. All right? It's an emotional issue, basically. When I taught school, we had to be informed when anything affected a student's behavior. If their parents were in jail, their parents separated or divorced, and if they were molested. All right? Every child that I was informed had been molested was molested by a family member. Only one child, 13-year-old girl, was molested or raped, but she was a prostitute. That's what she did for a living. She made more money than I did. So when you're looking at this, these are not strangers in a community doing this. I think it's 90% of molesters are known to their victims. So what we're doing here by doing this, we're saying, okay, here they can live. When Daytona Beach did this, go to Beachside, there's no location whatsoever that they can live because there are schools, churches, and parks everywhere. And when you do 2,500 feet, that's almost a mile. Daytona is only 5 miles wide on the Beachside. So it's easy to eliminate them. So when you looked at it, you could literally go to Clyde Morris before they could live. And these people, if they come out of jail, don't have a lot of money. I just found out that the little tiny motel down the street, $1,600 a month for 200 square feet. To move in, it's $5,000. How many people coming out of jail has $5,000 in their pocket to rent? Most of the places that are cheap, relatively, are going to be in downtowns. What you have in the unincorporated, those clusters that would have inexperienced or a low-income properties are clustered. They're not going to move in next to you, Jeff, because they can afford a what, $400,000, $500,000 home. They're not going to buy out there. What do you have to rent out in the middle of nowhere? Very few rental properties. There's no place out where you are that somebody's going to be able to rent a property for $500 or $600. Not a 10-acre, 5-bedroom house. What you've done is you've now excluded them basically from anywhere in the county. We got sued as the city when we were trying to exclude adult clubs. We restricted it so badly that they went to court, and the court said, yep, that's right, throw it out. So we got sued because there weren't enough locations. If you say there's absolutely no locations for them to rent in Volusia County, I can imagine a lawsuit. Thank you.
Julie Martin.
Good afternoon. My name is Julie Martin, and I've been writing to sex offenders for 15 years. And I wish that this could be a question and answer period because I could answer all of your questions. Mr. Robbins, I think you're a little misinformed on what a sex offender is, because it can be a contractor who peed on the side of the road using his truck door. It can be a young man who's sexting his girlfriend. The man or person who committed a horrific crime is not getting out of prison to face these ordinances. He's in for life. The people you're hurting are not the people who made these horrific mistakes. It's unfortunate that they do, but the person ahead of me was correct. Offenders are not violent, extremely likely to use physical violence. That's not who they are. They're con men. They take a situation, they take advantage of it. And it is a lot of times family or a neighbor or someone they know, which is why educating our children is so important, for them to understand what is right and what is wrong. But adding another layer to them after they have served their time in prison, what kind of opportunity do they have? Yes, they made a mistake, but if they paid their time in prison, don't they have the opportunity to get out? I probably own all those properties that you have listed. I'd be happy to go over them with you, make it easier on you. I own 7 of them in Volusia County. I make sure my guys are doing the right thing. I really do. I don't want them to hurt someone. It is not my intention. But if they're doing the right thing, isn't it better for them to be monitored by me and probation and the state? If they're in the woods, how do they charge their device? If they're in the woods, how are they cleaned to get a job? They need an opportunity. If you take it away from them, they're going to be desperate and they will want to go back to prison. It happens. They don't know what to do. They get scared, and at least they have food, and they will go commit a crime so they can go back.
John Freeman.
Good afternoon. I'm John Freeman. I was born in Halifax Hospital 68 years ago, and I grew up in this area, so I'm one of those natives that hangs around. When I was young, my teenage uncle went to Vietnam, died as a teenager within a month of getting there. Shortly after, I went into the service at 17 to go to Vietnam. I served until the late 80s. All that, the important thing about that is that after a while, I got out. I lost friends. I had, therefore, put it in my mind to help out veterans and people that I met that were veterans who were having problems. Well, along the way, I also started dealing with people coming out of prisons. I dealt with registrants, people that are on sex offenders and what have you. I have an old 96 beater that I drive people around to appointments so they can go see the doctor or pick up groceries or whatever they need to do. I get them to group therapy. One of the biggest problems I have, I also run a prison ministry, is people, especially offenders, getting out, having a place to live. Sure, there's all kind of houses out there. There's only so many that will open their door to rent to a sex offender. And if you start cutting out the number of houses out there, that significantly reduces the number of people that can rent to sex offenders. I know Thomas Jefferson spoke about life. That was the very first thing in the Bill of Rights, was life. Maslow said that's one of the basic needs people have, is a place to have a house or a roof over your head and food and safety from the elements and what have you. If we start cutting away sections because we want to say, we don't want you in our area, well, isn't that punitive? Aren't you saying, we don't want you in our area, so we're going to do what we can to squeeze you out of the area? I've seen people that are working doggone hard trying to do their assessments, jumping through all the hoops they have to do through probation and what have you. And I know some of them that live in the woods. Some of the guys I help are veterans that have one leg or no legs. I had a friend that was blind. He was blinded in prison because of his charges. Guess what? They found out he wasn't guilty. But he was also a doctor in Vietnam. So all this, let's throw them out in the woods. Well, you're talking about your fellow veterans, the people that have served this country. You're talking about people. You can say offender, like they don't say convict anymore, they say inmate. No, these are people. And what we do here will reflect on how we as a people are seen later on, how well we take care of those that have erred. Thank you.
Councilman Robbins.
Chair, just in closing, I want to add, because I forgot to do it earlier, and thank you for giving me a third time here just to close this out, hopefully. But the state attorney also sent a letter of support of this as our kind of chief official in this area. And I would just note that with that being said, if it wasn't deemed acceptable, he of all people would possibly say something about it. And guys, you know, I try to understand this. I think we just think maybe a little bit different. I don't know what the answer is, but what I do want to say is that and reiterate that things like this are put in place for public safety. And I want to. There's some very, ma'am, you had said a couple things about a contractor who peed on the side of the road. Chris, I sent you over some jury instructions. I just want to go ahead and put this to bed. Are you able to pull those up, page 1 and 2 that I'd given you? Are you able to put them together by chance? I'll just go, there's several elements that the jury has to consider when convicting people in this, and we have to be completely accurate. And one of the elements is the intended exposure or exhibition of his or her sexual organs to be in a vulgar, indecent, lewd, or lascivious manner. The exposure of exhibition of the sexual organs was in a vulgar, indecent, lewd, or lascivious manner. Can you go ahead and put the second portion of it up, Carissa? Nakedness and a vulgar, indecent. The nakedness was in vulgar, indecent, lewd, and lascivious. Proof of mere nudity or exposure of sexual organ is not sufficient for you to find the defendant guilty. And this is a baseline of what our judicial system uses to convict. I'm not making this stuff up. I see you're shaking your head. Used in regard to this offense and words vulgar, and it goes on this. So, you know, I'm trying to deal in facts here. I'm trying to respect, but I just think I'm off from that thought process. But if there's nothing else, counsel, I'd like to call the question.
Calling the question means we have to go to an immediate vote. We have 2 members that would like to speak.
Counsel, I'm sorry, I didn't see you guys up there. That's my fault. Sorry, I'll retract that.
Jake Johansson.
I just want to seek clarification. I might have to ask Russ or Don for this. Those were jury instructions that we just got, but you know, I've tried to stay away from this, but I have an acquaintance who's in this situation, and he never went to court. So it was, you know, you might go to jail for 20 years and all the stuff that comes with going to jail as a sex offender, or you could plea, and it was a urinating in public thing, and given that he pleaded, and so here he is. He peed in public, probably the wrong thing to do, and so now he's registered, and he has to live by these rules, and none of that stuff that was just mentioned a second ago fell for him. He just pled because he didn't want to go to jail and all the things that resulted from that. So how do we make that leap of faith? That I know the person that Councilman Robbins is thinking of, and I know that person. He's in jail, hopefully, if all that stuff is true. But again, I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question. How many people have peed in public here on the dais? And if you did it at the wrong place at the wrong time, you might have plead as well. So I'm not saying to change your mind, but it's not just people that go to court or go to the jury trial that end up in this position. Thank you.
Councilman Dempsey.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. I'm glad you asked that because I don't know if you guys remember the last time we were discussing this, I brought this up. That's my biggest beef with the system. That's why I ran for state attorney a couple of years ago and I lost because I ran against minimum mandatory sentencing. I'm against any type of minimum mandatory sentencing because it takes away the checks and balances of our system. And when we got the legislature saying anybody who's accused of peeing or exposing themselves in front of a minor under the 12 or under, they're facing, life. So every single one of you, I've never peed on I don't know if anybody's peed on a dais. I couldn't quite understand. But no, none of you would play Russian roulette. I did this last time. None of you all know what it is. There's only a one bullet in that revolver. So 5 and 6 chance you're going to win at Russian roulette, but none of you would play it for $1 million. And this is to answer Jake's question. The reason any of you would play the reason you won't play Russian roulette is because if you lose, if that 1 in 6 bullet comes up, you're dead. So what happens with people like Jake and a lot of the people I deal with, and I've dealt with both as a prosecutor. Remember, I'm former law enforcement too, Danny. I'm not just a bleeding heart defense lawyer. I'm a former prosecutor who used to prosecute these people. I prosecuted one of the biggest known molesters on the east side back in the early 90s, okay? So I'm not sympathetic to these people, but you have to understand the people that Jake's talking about, the people that she's talking about, the people that I'm talking about are the people who have 10 images on their computer. I don't know how they got it. I could sneak on you. When you go to the bathroom, I can get on there and get 10 images on there. Guilty. Now, you want to go to trial? Because, if you go to trial, you're not going to play Russian roulette, but if you go to trial on those allegations, you'll probably win. 5 and 6 chance you're going to win, just like in Russian roulette. But if you lose, you get a bad jury. Now you're going to prison for life. It's going to cost you your life. A lifetime of being raped by inmates, beaten by the guards, a lifetime of misery. So what happens, So what happens is the state attorney dangles this carrot. We'll offer you probation. We'll let you walk amongst us, okay? We're not going to send you to prison for life. In the cases where the person confesses or the child is pregnant or there's STDs or there's a recorded phone call where you got concrete evidence that this person committed this heinous crime. It's the questionable cases where they find it on David's computer. Dave's like, I didn't know it was on there. Yeah, right. It was on your computer. Go to trial if you've got a defense or So you're going to go to trial, you feel lucky, or are you going to take the probation as a sex offender? Those are the people we're talking about. And just like Jake's friend and like countless other people that I deal with all the time, those are the people that I don't want to see having to live in the woods. The ones that didn't have the courage to pull the trigger. It sounds great. I've read that jury instruction countless times in my 34 years, both as a prosecutor and defense attorney. The problem is they don't go to trial because nobody, not one of us, and probably 90% of those people, 99%, don't have the courage to pull that trigger and take their fate in front of 6 unknown people when the state's dangling a guarantee of no prison. You're going to be a sex offender. If you're in Volusia, you're going to have to live in the woods now. But ask yourself if you would really have the courage. If I accused one of you of doing something to my daughter, would you really feel comfortable taking that in front of a jury? Especially if the state attorney was offering you probation and a guarantee, or are you willing to risk your life, the rest of your life? There's a lot of people who don't have the money or the courage to take that to trial. That sounds great in theory, Danny, but in the reality of it is most people don't have the courage or the money to fight it effectively. They take a plea, and they count on people like this to at least give them some sense of stability in their life and a chance at recovering from, a lot of times, what I think are false allegations. I think this is one of the biggest fallacies of our system is just we're too quick to just tough on crime. Yeah, let's just burn, you know, it's low-hanging fruit politically to want to hammer these people. There's a lot of innocent people caught up in the net, and that's who I'm concerned about. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice Chair Kent.
Thank you, Chairman. I've not asked any questions or weighed in on this. And I'll just say, I came in here thinking one way, and then, you know, I listened to Mr. Robbins, and I started feeling a different way. Then I listened to Don, I feel another way. Then I hear Jake talk, and I feel another way. And this is a struggle for me. But I will say, it weighs on me that the sheriff is behind this. It also weighs on me that the state attorney weighed in on this. But I have to say, you know, 5 of the 7 of us represent about 115,000, 120,000 people. I've not had one of my constituents ask for this. And if any of you have, I'd like to hear about it, because I've not had that. I've not had anybody call me and say, hey, I want you to take this up, or I saw this in the paper, I want you to support this. So that weighs on me also. This isn't an easy decision, which is why it's been brought up before us several times. Our attorneys have worked on it, and we're sitting here this evening doing the hard work that the people elected us to do. So I really don't know where I'm going to end up on this with a yes or no, because, you know, Jake, when you hear a story like that, I mean, it absolutely will rattle you, because it's not, you know, when you think about the heinous, horrendous things, it's easy to say, burn them, this is it, you know? And if my memory is right, you know, back whenever Florida agreed with the death penalty, there was a very, very effective commercial. If my memory is correct, I was a little kid, but it was this guy being led to the death chamber, and I mean, he was just pleading with, please, please, I didn't do it, I didn't do anything, please don't do this to me. And then the next scene was this little child saying, please, please, I didn't do anything to you, you know. And then it goes back to this guy ready for the death penalty, and it's very effective, because you're like, get him, you know, how dare you hurt a child? But there's another side to the story, Jake, and you shared that. And Don, you know, because of your day job, you share that you represent people who aren't willing, for lack of better terms, to play Russian roulette. And now they have that scarlet letter for the rest of their life, and they very well could have been urinating in public. Or, I mean, it's inappropriate. I guess the takeaway from that is just do it in your pants, I guess. Really. It's frightening when you hear about stories like that. I don't know where I'm going to be on this.
I haven't weighed in either, but I'll just do it quickly. I think, Don, just like we did the first time this came up, I think you, because of your experience, you make a compelling argument that I'm more afraid of the unintended consequences of this, of the harm that we would do to the public and to people that I'm not even going to go through all the possibilities of what they could have been tagged with. A young guy with a younger girlfriend, whatever it is. If my phone was ringing, if I got any emails, if I saw headlines in the newspapers that this was a problem in Volusia County, I'd feel differently. I think this is low-hanging political fruit, and I don't like that. So I'm gonna oppose it with you for the reasons that you have said, and I think we have a system in place that is taking care of these people and keeping them accountable. I'm not hearing of a larger, wider problem. Councilman Santiago.
Thank you. While he can certainly defend himself, I only chimed in because I don't think it's a political posturing with this ordinance proposal. I think even before I got on the council, the council member Robbins had mentioned this is a priority of his back to me before I got on here. I recognize that it's a difficult decision. I also recognize that other municipalities or counties have done similar, and it seems to be working. While it might not be convenient for some folks, it's not quite the same, Don. I was reflecting back on your other arguments earlier today with the 4 cars, right? That would make a difference. It's not quite the same. I won't make it apples and apples. But I think you alluded to that if one more car holds there, then one more can have an accident. Though I don't use these analogies, but if this does save one more or prevent one person from being in an area that they probably shouldn't be near a child, that could cause a problem, which I know isn't the sole problem. I'm going to hate the fact that I just said that analogy because I'm going to counter it to somebody in the future. But I was just thinking about your comments earlier. That was just more sport than anything. But I think it seems to be working other places. There's not an uproar of advocacy saying, don't do this or it hasn't worked in other communities. So that's why I support it. And I think Danny has been steadfast in working on this for a long time now. And I'm inclined to give it a shot. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And not seeing anyone else wishing to speak, Carissa, would you call the roll?
Mr. Dempsey.
No.
Mr. Johansson.
Yes.
Mr. Kent.
Yes.
Mr. Reinhardt.
Yes.
Mr. Robbins.
Yes.
Mr. Santiago. That was a yes for the
Yes.
record. And Mr. Brower.
No, and the ordinance passes 5-2.